Anamorphic lenses are a staple of the filmmaking industry, but they're really inaccessible for a lot of filmmakers. That is, until Sirui came along and started making their budget-friendly anamorphic lenses that help us independent filmmakers who don't have $30,000 to spend on a single lens get the same anamorphic look that you see in theaters on the big screen. And Sirui just came out with a new anamorphic lens that has built-in autofocus, which is revolutionary for the whole lens manufacturing industry as a whole. No anamorphic lens in history has had autofocus in it, so this lens is the first of its kind, which is a big deal for filmmakers like me who hate and avoid manual focus at all costs. No problem for big productions where you have a full camera department with a DP, camera operator, first AC, second AC, and the works, but for filmmakers like me who are run and gun filmmaking with their camera, having that autofocus in the camera takes a major stressor off of your film shoot. So in this video, I'm gonna bring you along as I unbox the Sirui 40mm t1.8 autofocus anamorphic lens, take it out for a test spin, and then bring it into the computer and synthesize my first thoughts and impressions on this lens. And make sure you stick around to the end, because not only am I gonna break down everything that I love about this lens, but at the end, I'm also gonna go over some of the cons and things that I'm not so excited about. I cannot wait to jump in, so let's go ahead and unbox the lens. So I just got in the new Sirui 40mm autofocus anamorphic lenses last night, and I'm gonna do an unboxing here for you on camera, give you kind of my first thoughts, first impressions on these lenses. I am honestly ridiculously excited about these lenses because I've been in the industry for, look at that. I've been in the film industry for a little over 10 years now, and I've done a little bit of everything. I've done DP work, I've directed, produced, gaff, grip, sound mixing, you know, I've done a little bit of everything at this point. And of everything that I do, definitely what I enjoy the most is producing. So about, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago, I made the decision that I am not gonna keep up to date with all the newest camera stuff and that kind of thing, because I had, look at that beauty. That's a nice looking case. I felt like I had the technical knowledge and the equipment I needed to DP my own projects that I was producing, and it just wasn't necessary for me to keep up with all the newest, latest stuff. But look at that nice vacuum seal. I just got the 23mm, 24mm Sirui that is not autofocus to kind of pair with this guy, and it also came vacuum sealed like this. But look at that beauty. Its first impression here is it's much lighter than I expected it to. If I compare it to like the manual focus 24mm here, the 24mm is much, I would say it's twice as heavy at least. So I'm really surprised by how lightweight this is. It's definitely bigger. It's not quite as big as the lens that I normally use, which is the Samyang 35 to 150 f2 to 2.8. It's what I'm shooting right now on. And that's what I've been DPing with for the last year or two now. And the reason that I haven't switched to anamorphic lenses like this sooner is because, honestly, I switched to Sony about 3 or 4 years ago. I think it was 2020. When I did, I let my autofocus skills atrophy pretty dramatically. So now I kind of avoid at all costs anything that's manual focus, which is why I never switched to anamorphic lenses as I built out my bigger equipment package. Nice little strap here for your case. Definitely, this feels high quality. I wouldn't throw this off a building or anything, but I think, you know, if you're carrying this in there like that and you dropped it, it probably, you know, it's gonna do something to protect it for sure. So definitely feel like that's a nice little addition that I wasn't expecting, and the 24mm did not come with that. So that is definitely a nice addition. Otherwise, in the box here, we've also got your service card and a warranty card. Looks like some other just instruction stuff that normally come in the box with these kinds of things. So it's got a nice stepping ring here. Some of these have a switch on them where you can switch it from click. Yep, so you can declick it. So now it's a nice smooth motion there, or you can have the clicks on, so that's pretty cool that that's included there. Nice smooth focus pole, focus ring there. Not that I'll be using that ever. I'm sure, you know, time to time, usually on this kind of stuff, you do have to end up switching over to the manual focus to pick up a shot if it's like too dark or that kind of thing. The autofocus just isn't latching onto it. But I'm super, super excited about these lenses because I have 2 feature films next year in the spring of 2025 that I am DPing that I was going to shoot on my spherical lenses that have autofocus, the Samyang. I've got a Sigma and a Sony that I really like. But I'm excited about potentially shooting them on anamorphic and getting that nice widescreen anamorphic look, get some lens flares in there. And so I'm shooting a couple of short films in January. And for those short films, I'm gonna take these guys on a spin. See how they work, you know, make sure that I'm happy with the performance of them and whatnot, stress test them actually on a film set before trying to actually shoot, you know, a feature film or potentially 2 feature films on them next year. Another great strap here for this one. Same kind of thing in this one. I'm kind of expecting all of the same features and whatnot in the second one here. Same thing, nice vacuum seal. Rip that open and looks very nice. You can see the front element in it. You can see it's got that nice normal anamorphic look in there. It is round on the outside versus the 24mm here is got that nice anamorphic bokeh shape on it, which is pretty cool. All right, so we're coming out here to test out the new Sirui 40mm t1.8 autofocus anamorphic lens. So Lexa, my wife, is gonna be our model right over here, and we're gonna see how good does this anamorphic lens actually look in the real world. All right, so we did our first couple shots here with our Godox MS60R over there in the background, maybe like a street light or something like that. And honestly, I think this looks really, really good. I did a shoot out in the woods kind of like this a few months ago, and the footage turned out good, but not quite as cinematic and like not as professional as I wanted it to. My lighting setup here, I kind of took the opportunity to iterate on the lighting style that I did. Basically, I used a lot of hard light, super undiffused, small light sources when I lit that scene. And here I've got a 4x4 floppy ultra bounce plus bouncing light off the side of the house over here. It's kind of like an 8x8, 12x12 over there. And I feel like the footage is looking really nice. Definitely loving that light streak that we're getting on the Sirui here. It definitely looks really, really good. When I compare it against my Samyang lens, which is what I normally shoot on, you're definitely seeing quite a big boost in quality. I feel like the Sirui lens just has that cinematic flair that comes with shooting anamorphic, that comes with those lens flares that you just don't get on spherical lenses, and you're definitely not getting on the Samyang. Even though I love my Samyang, the Sirui is looking really, really great. So the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna do just a couple of moving shots, that kind of thing, to test out the handheld, see, you know, as she's walking back and forth, as I'm moving around, how well is the autofocus actually tracking with her. So let's shoot it. So you might be wondering, why did I get 2 of these Sirui lenses? The exact same thing, basically. The 40mm Sirui lens. Well, I've got the feature next February that I'm planning on shooting using this lens, and basically, I don't want to end up getting to like day 7 of the shoot and then the lens breaks and I have to like find a different anamorphic lens, or, you know, try to get a hold of another one of these, but you know, there's no way that I'm gonna get a hold of another 40mm autofocus. You know, it's just not gonna happen. So I got 2 of them. I also got that 24mm Sirui lens, which is not autofocus, but that's just kind of a backup lens. Again, if I needed a 3rd lens, but also if I need something a little wider for an establishing shot or something like that, I've got it. But the other benefit to having the second lens here is that they actually flare the light differently. So there's a blue flare and a neutral flare version of it. And so basically the blue flare takes whatever lens flare that's flaring it up and just turns it blue. And the neutral one just takes whatever it is and just flares it out
out like white or whatever color that it is. And so I got both of them so that, you know, one of the lens breaks and I need to replace it. But then also, since I was getting to, I went ahead and got the blue flare and the neutral flare so that, you know, shot by shot or scene by scene, really, I can decide what kind of tone I'm trying to set. That is our test here. We just wrapped up.
And with the test shoot out of the way, it was time to look at the footage in the computer and analyze the results. So bringing the footage into the computer, I am really happy with the way that the lighting turned out. But if I just throw the two shots side by side, one shot on the Samyang and one shot on the Sirui, I mean, you can immediately notice that I feel like the Sirui has a significantly higher quality feel to it. Obviously, you've got that nice anamorphic lens streak going on, but more than that, you've also got some skin smoothing happening on the actual face of the talent. And I feel like it's most prominent on the face, but really it's doing that to the whole image. And then zooming in a little bit to look at the bokeh, the out of focus portions of the image, you're definitely getting that oval shaped anamorphic look in the blurred out portions of the image versus the circular spherical shape of the Samyang lens. I was really curious to see the differences because I knew, you know, anamorphic traditionally has that oval shape to its bokeh, but I thought maybe since it's only a 1.33 squeeze rather than like a 2.0 squeeze, that oval shape might not be pronounced enough to really notice the difference very much. But I definitely feel like looking at the footage, you definitely are getting that more cinematic oval shape that you just can't get off of your spherical lenses. So this morning, I actually took the lens back out and got a few more test shots, specifically to compare the bokeh when we don't have a big lens flare in the shot. I really wanted to compare specifically the bokeh from my spherical lenses against my the new Sirui lens. Again, just putting the shots side by side, I feel like we are getting that same kind of skin smoothing slash just general, you know, less sharp, more smooth image off of the Sirui, which I love. I think it looks way nicer than the Sigma lens. If we once again zoom into the background and take a look at that bokeh, again, we're seeing that oval shaped bokeh in the trees there behind the talent. And overall, I mean, we are absolutely, even without the lens streak that you would associate with anamorphic lenses, we're still very much getting that anamorphic look and feel to the image for sure. Now, one thing I did notice during our night shoot was that I specifically took it on the A7 IV in APS-C mode because the lens is marketed as a crop sensor lens, as a micro four thirds or APS-C lens. But as I was shooting with it at night, the APS-C function got turned off a couple of times, so it just bugged back out into the full frame mode, and I wasn't noticing the vignette that I would normally expect to see from an APS-C lens on a full frame sensor. If you look at the 24mm Sirui, for example, this one isn't autofocus, this is their manual focus 24mm anamorphic lens, you're getting that real, you know, classic blacked out edges that you expect from APS-C lenses on full frame. Well, I wasn't noticing that in the night footage, but obviously, you know, I'm shooting at night, so the whole image is already dark, so there might be some heavy vignetting that I'm not just not noticing. So when I took it out this morning, I also tested it out in full frame mode, and you can see here there really is little to no vignetting on the sides. If you look really closely, you can see just a little bit of vignetting in the corners, but it's very, very minimal. And what I've seen people saying in Facebook groups and other threads online is that just a 10% crop into the image totally gets rid of that. So that definitely is a big deal for sure. I also brought it up and did a little bit of testing up here in kind of my studio setup here. And you can see here in full frame mode, you're definitely getting a little bit of a drop off on the edges. Now that we've got it pointed right at a white wall, you can really see the edge there is looking quite a bit darker than center frame. Whereas if we crop into APS-C mode, a lot of that is getting eliminated. So looking at our Lumetri scope here, you're definitely seeing that drop off disappear as you go into APS-C mode. Now, as a control, I did the same thing on my Sigma lens, my Sigma 24-70 zoomed into 40mm to match the Sirui. And again, you are seeing a little bit of fall off. So this isn't, it's not a perfect test. There's some ambient light happening in the room here besides just the lights that I'm using to light this. So there's already a little bit of fall off on the sides. And I think that there is a little bit of vignetting on that 24 to 70 millimeter. Now, if we compare the full frame of the Sirui to the full frame of the Sigma, you are seeing quite a bit less of a drop off though. Going back to the Sirui, you are seeing a much more significant drop off in terms of the vignette around the sides. With that said though, honestly for me, I can't say that this is a huge deal, especially when I look at the full frame version of the outside shoot that we did. That vignetting, like in the real world, is just not a big deal. And I don't like, you can barely see it on the edges there, and it just does not bother me hardly at all. And on the other edges here, of course, where there's more texture happening in the image, you're just not seeing that vignette hardly at all. So for me, I feel like this is totally fine to use on full frame cameras, and I almost certainly will be using this on my A7S III. With that said, I did do one more set of comparisons inside, again looking at the bokeh on the Sirui versus the Sigma inside, both at 40 millimeters, and I do feel like the difference here is quite a bit less pronounced looking at them because there's just a lot less texture in the background to see differences in bokeh, but you are absolutely still getting that skin smoothing effect from the Sirui, putting them side by side. The last thing that I want to take a look at here is a couple of autofocus tests that I did with the lens. You can see this shot of me outside. It's tracking me really, really well. I really don't have hardly any complaints about the autofocus in this camera in terms of just keeping me in focus as I'm moving around. I also did an inside test, kind of a similar situation. You can see that as I get too close to the camera, that it's no longer able to focus on me because I broke into the minimum focus distance there. I just can't quite focus that close to the camera. But as soon as I move beyond that minimum focus distance, it is keeping me in focus pretty reliably. I will say that I did a couple other tests earlier in the morning where I was standing just a little bit too close to the camera. So again, I was too close to the camera for the lens to actually focus on me, and you can see that it's doing a pretty nasty focus hunting, trying to get me in focus, but it just can't quite make it happen. So I actually feel like this is a pro to the lens, because this is going to tell you really quickly, if your subject that you're shooting is too close to the lens for it to focus on it, it's going to be giving you this weird focus hunting effect. So it's kind of, it's almost like sirens flashing at you. Hey, I can't focus on what you want me to focus on. So I actually feel like that's a really nice thing, and it's really nice to know that the lens is going to do that. I will say a big concern with this lens that a lot of other people online are definitely taking note of is the super loud autofocus motors in the Sirui. In my Sigma, in my Samyang, in my Sony lenses, I've never really, you can't hear the lens focusing at all. They're super silent, super quiet. But with the Sirui, when the lens is focusing, whether you're doing it manually or using the autofocus system, you definitely hear that kind of grinding of gears as the focus is shifting. And that's just because the glass elements in an anamorphic lens are so much bigger, bulkier, harder to move around, and that's why you're getting this kind of grinding sound as the motors are moving them around that you're not getting on spherical lenses where the glass is thinner and it's easier to move around inside the lens. So I'm gonna play a quick clip for you here so that you can actually hear what this sounds like in the real world. Now, obviously, we've got the microphone pointed right at the lens, so this is kind of, how do we make this sound as bad as possible? In real life, as I'm actually using the lens, I can hear it, but when you're actually doing a take of something, I don't think that that's gonna mess with your audio at all, really. Especially in a situation like this where I'm just sitting and talking to the camera. I mean, the focus isn't moving at all, so even if I move back and forth like that a little bit, that's not enough of a range that it's gonna be making loud grinding noises noises that your audio is going to pick up that's going to ruin, your dialogue tracks. Even in a situation where there was a bigger focus throw during the shot, even kind of in a worst case scenario, we could say, again, it's not loud enough that, when the microphone's not pointed directly at it, when the microphone's pointed towards your subject, towards your talent who's speaking, I don't think this is going to be hardly a big deal at all for you as you're shooting your films or whatever you're shooting. So with all of that said, I definitely have to give my endorsement to the Sirui 40mm t1.8 lens. I'm super excited about this lens, and I absolutely will be shooting. In about 3 weeks, I've got a short film shoot coming up, and I'm gonna take these two lenses and really test them out on that shoot. If everything goes well, I'm gonna use it on the feature I'm shooting in about 2 months. So make sure that you stay tuned to the channel here, the Visionary Studios YouTube channel, because I'm gonna be making a ton more content about these lenses as I test them out, try them out, and use them in real world shooting scenarios. With that said though, even if you're shooting on the nicest lenses in the world, Cooke S4s, Cooke S7s, and maybe you've got that on a Red Epic or you've got it on an Arri Alexa, even if you've got the nicest lenses with the nicest cameras in the world, if you don't know the basic principles of filmmaking, your footage is still going to end up looking like trash. So that's why I took my 10 plus years in the filmmaking industry and put together my top 5 mistakes that I see amateur filmmakers make. These are mistakes that I used for years and years on an ongoing basis when I first got into the film industry. And they're mistakes that if you've been in filmmaking for less than 5 years, you are definitely making at least one of these 5 critical mistakes. So if you want to learn more about what these mistakes are and how to avoid them when you shoot your next film, just click on the first link in the description.